Hello everybody. The European Union is facing another wave of mass migration, and this time it seems, or it's obvious, that it is a hostile act from a state that does not wish us well. And it is so obvious that even the European Union, of all people, does recognize that this is human trafficking and this is an act of weaponization, mass migration as a weapon. There's even a book, I think, about that context, about using migration as a weapon. And in this case, it is undeniable because Lukashenko, the dictator of Belarus, is issuing visas, tourist visas, to Middle Easterners in great numbers. And from there, they are crossing into Lithuania, Latvia, Poland. And from those countries, they are making it to Germany, which has the most generous welfare system, which I think is the primary motivation behind it. In October alone, 5,200 migrants have come through this route to Germany alone. And that's just an intermediate point. The previous month saw a steady rise of migrants coming. And we are arriving at a place where we can no longer just talk about fixing our migration system issues and filling the loopholes. This is one part of the solution, and Poland is actually doing a good deal to mend the situation. They are building a fence between themselves and Belarus, which will be 180 kilometers long. They are hiring an additional 750 border patrols. They had an intermediate state of emergency called on the border, where people could not assemble in order to be able to secure the places and so on. They are doing a lot. They are going to install night vision surveillance cameras and motion detectors. The Polish and I assume the Latvians and Lithuanians, they are doing their fair share without any help from the European Union, by the way. But this alone won't probably solve all the issue at hand, because now we are also in a situation where we actually have to discuss power dynamics. I said in a previous video, quite precautiously, that we must not be bossed around by dictatorships. We cannot allow to be compromised and to be blackmailed by actual dictatorships, and therefore we must fix our immigration issues, right? And it would help a big deal if we had already fixed our stuff, if we had already sorted out that not everything is Nazism, etc., etc. It would help a great deal to kind of fend off this kind of crisis. But it is not a full solution, because right now we are actually dependent on Belarus, or more specifically, the bigger partner, the neighboring country, Russia. Belarus is not Russia. They once left the Soviet Union when the communist regime fell apart, when the Soviet Union fell apart. But they are closely tied to Russia. They are of those that formerly called themselves independent, of the former republics that formerly called themselves independent. They are the most linked to Russia still today. Belarus, by the way, does actually mean White Russia. I'm not quite sure why our media has decided this year, or our German media has decided this year, that they are not going to call White Russia anymore. It is a peculiar thing because the French actually have it more right than the English. It's the word, the name in the native language is actually more Belarus and not Belarus. And for whatever reason, the German media have flipped on a coin and have synchronously changed from calling it White Russia to Belarus. It's just an interesting little fact, which just showed to me again that everything in our media is lockstep. They can't even introduce a word independently or something like, one one media outlet just says Belarus instead of White Russia. No, they're just all doing everything at the same time. And then when you ask, why is your newscast so sameish? They will pretend that you are an idiot. They flipped on a dime this year. Before this year, it was White Russia. Just a little fact. So Alexandr Lukashenko is issuing visas, and he is inviting the whole world to come to Belarus. About 40 flights land on the airport Minsk every week. This is twice as many as they were in 2019 before the corona crisis. 40 landings in Minsk on Minsk airport alone, and there are more than one airport in Belarus. And he's doing this because he wants to retaliate for the sanctions. Now, there are some sanctions that are necessary because Belarus, like its partner country, Russia, they are a threat to neighboring countries. And there are some of these sanctions that are indispensable. And those are the ones that can be used for military or oppression purposes. With oppression, the European Union, first and foremost, has in mind all these surveillance instruments. If you want to vend software that helps Alexander Lukashenko to spy on his own people, for example, that would be forbidden. There are sanctions on this. Then the European Union also bans oil, potassium chloride, goods for processing tobacco, and tobacco products. I'm not quite sure what they are gunning for here, if it's cigarettes or pipes or whatever. It's ludicrous. Then they ban any activity from Belarusian officials in the European Union capital markets, like the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, for example. Then they don't allow you to insure anything that is connected to public institutions. So you may not insure public institutions in Belarus. They also stopped foreign aid, but I don't really think this is a real sanction. But we have a foreign aid giving bank similar to the World Bank called the European Investment Bank. I think this whole thing should be dissolved. And they have stopped any projects that could benefit Belarus. They also asked the memberships to stop their maybe also foreign aid giving banks, bank-like institutions. And the European Council also stopped the overflight of planes from Belarus over the territory of the European Union. And those things, not necessarily the foreign aid stuff, not necessarily the surveillance and military use restrictions, but those things that are on top of that, they should be put into question because we actually don't have the leverage over Belarus or Russia. We feel that right now because the gas is short, there's a big inflation, and on top of it all we have this idiotic environmentalist energy policy, the energy turnaround, Energiewende in Germany. And the reason why the costs are rising is because we are dumb enough to shut down functioning power plants in the next, or by the end of this year, we are going to shut down 3 functioning nuclear power stations. Next year, the last 3 functioning power stations, nuclear power stations, will be shut down. And we have a lot of windmills, wind turbines is the correct term, a lot of wind turbines and solar panels, and those technologies, they are not stable. And in order to keep the power grid working, we have to run gas turbines all the time. We have to level the odds with gas turbines, and this eats up a lot of the energy that is available to us, and this is driving up the heating costs right now. So what is the reason why the European Union is issuing all these sanctions against Belarus and ranking them in the first place? It is that they have Belarus is is a dictatorship. It is a real dictatorship, and they have obviously committed election fraud at during the last elections. And what's more, when there were protests, they were cracking down on those protests viciously. They arrested a lot of people. They have driven a very high-profile oppositional politician out of the country. If you look into the recent history of Belarus, and with reason, I mean, like everything from the 1990s onwards, since they became independent from the Soviet Union, you also find that there are a lot of high-profile assassinations. So we are talking about an actual, real dictatorship, not Trump is a Nazi, blah blah blah, talk. No, we are talking here about an actual dictatorship. And one of the incidents that sparked the recent bout of measures was the forced landing of a Ryanair plane. Ryanair is an Irish airline. It's a cheap airline, quite popular here in Europe. And they did so to arrest a dissident blogger with the name Raman Pratasevich and his girlfriend Sofia Zapega. They are now under house arrest in Minsk, so they are still not free. This is why all these sanctions are up. But here's the thing. I said in a previous video, quite precautiously, quite foolishly, that we should not be blackmailed. But the situation is now that we are dependent on Russia, and it was very recent actually that our government or the European Union, they came together to beg on their knees that Russia gives us cheap gas, because we have made stupid environmentalist energy policies that have destroyed the stability of our power grid, and we need gas desperately. And now they have the power over us. It is no longer a matter of shall we be moral? It is a matter of can we be moral after we have been dumb? And this is the lesson we must learn now. Those who say we should weaken our countries or we should allow our countries to become weak, they very often do so in the name of a higher moral, of environmentalism or whatever it is. But then, once you have actually lost your strength and you become dependent from foreign powers, very often hostile foreign powers, you can no longer act moral. Okay, you are losing even that ability. You cannot weaken your country in the pursuit of a higher moral, because in the end this will bite you and you will not be able to pursue any moral whatsoever. This was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.